The biting wind whipping off Lake Michigan seemed to reflect Ethan Miller's own internal chill on that fall morning in Chicago. Despite being 38 years old with a fortune that put him in the stratosphere of the world's elite, there was a hollowness inside him that no tech acquisition or market conquest could ever fill. Ethan tugged at the collar of his cashmere coat, a nervous tic he'd developed over the years, and pressed on with his solitary walk. 3 years ago, he had started this peculiar ritual. Once a month, he would send his driver home and lose himself in the city's grittier, more authentic neighborhoods, a world away from the gleaming towers of the Gold Coast. His board of directors considered it a bizarre eccentricity, a billionaire meandering through the narrow streets of Wicker Park, observing lives so profoundly different from his own curated existence. But for Ethan, these walks were a tether, an anchor to a reality far from boardrooms and Gulfstream jets. "Maybe it's just guilt," he murmured, the words snatched away by the wind as he rounded a corner onto a street buzzing with life. The smell of street cart tacos and roasting nuts mingled with the crisp morning air, creating a symphony of urban authenticity that was strangely comforting. It was then that a splash of vibrant orange caught his eye from across the street. A small, makeshift stand, cobbled together from old milk crates, was piled high with oranges arranged in careful, neat pyramids. Behind this burst of color stood a little girl, no older than 6, her brow furrowed in concentration as she meticulously organized the fruit. Ethan couldn't articulate what compelled him to cross the street. Perhaps it was the stark contrast of the dark, curly-haired child against the city's gray, imposing architecture, or the simple, jarring fact that she was alone, selling fruit on a Thursday morning when she should have been in a classroom. He moved without conscious thought. As he got closer, he saw a sign propped against the crates, lettered in the bright, wobbly crayon strokes that only a child could produce. "Help my mom, please. She needs surgery." The girl looked up as he approached, her small frame wrapped in a coat a size too big. She had large, arresting eyes, a startling shade of green that seemed to illuminate her delicate features. "Hi, mister," she said, her voice thin but clear. "Want to buy some oranges? They're really sweet." Ethan detected a familiar rhythm in her speech, a certain cadence that struck a chord deep within his memory. "Hello?" he replied, offering a gentle smile as he crouched down to her level. "Why aren't you in school today?" The girl bit her lower lip, a gesture so achingly familiar it sent a jolt of déjà vu through him. "Mommy's sick, really sick. Today she couldn't get out of bed," the child explained, with a gravity that belied her tender age. "So I came to sell oranges. I need to save money." Phew. There was a quiet dignity in her small stature that made Ethan's chest tighten. A child shouldn't have to bear such a weight. "How much are your oranges?" he asked, pulling his wallet from his coat. "3 for $5. She answered promptly, her green eyes gleaming with a flicker of hope. "But if you buy more, I can give you a discount." Ethan smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes for the first time that day. "I'll take them all." The girl's eyes widened, a mixture of disbelief and suspicion clouding her face. "All of them?" "All," he confirmed. "How much for the entire stock?" The child's brow furrowed again as she launched into a complex mental calculation. "I have 34 oranges," she announced finally. That would be, let's say, $60, Ethan suggested, knowing it was far more than they were worth. The girl nodded vigorously, her dark curls bouncing around her face. "Wow, that's a lot of money," she exclaimed, her voice filled with pure admiration. "It's going to help my mom a lot." Ethan pulled a few crisp bills from his wallet and handed them to her. She took them with a reverence reserved for something precious and fragile. "I won't be able to carry all the oranges right now," he explained, "but you can keep them and sell them to other people." The little vendor looked at him with a puzzled expression. "You don't want the oranges, but you're paying for them?" Ethan felt a wave of tenderness at her earnest confusion. "Let's just say it's my contribution to help your mother." The girl's face broke into a smile so radiant it could have warmed the entire city. "Thank you, mister. My name's Ecker. What's yours?" "Blake," he answered, the name slipping out before he could stop it, surprising himself by offering his real name. "Does your mom have something serious?" Lily's smile vanished as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by a somber look. "Yes, she needs an operation, but it's really expensive. She says she'll get better, but I know that's not true." The child's sharp intuition was as impressive as it was heartbreaking. "Can I show you a picture of her?" Lily asked, already digging into the pocket of her worn coat. She was so pretty before she got sick. Ethan nodded, more out of politeness than any real curiosity. The girl pulled out a creased, faded Polaroid and held it up with pride. In that instant, Ethan's world tilted on its axis. The air rushed from his lungs and his heart hammered against his ribs. He couldn't tear his gaze away from the image. It was a woman with wavy brown hair and a luminous smile, her head tilted just so. The same green eyes as the little girl, the same smile he had once known better than his own. It was Olivia, Olivia Sterling, his Liv. The woman he had loved with a desperate intensity, who had vanished from his life almost 7 years ago without a trace. "This is your mom?" Ethan asked, his voice a strained whisper, struggling to conceal the shock that was coursing through him like electricity. Lily nodded proudly. "She's pretty, right? This picture is from before she got sick. Now she's skinnier and some of her hair fell out." Ethan fought to keep his composure, his mind a whirlwind of frantic calculations and devastating conclusions. Olivia was sick, needing surgery, living in poverty with a child who had to be about 6 years old. 6 years since, a terrible equation started forming in his mind. "Does your mom live around here?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Yes, on Main Street," Lily said, gesturing vaguely toward the end of the block. "It's the red building with the broken door." Ethan handed the photo back, his hands trembling slightly. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said, his voice tight. "Who's looking after your mom now?" "Our neighbor, Mrs. Smith, checks on her at lunchtime, but soon I have to go back and give her medicine." The weight of the situation landed on Ethan's shoulders like a physical blow. He looked at the child again, seeing her now with new, horrified clarity. The specific shade of her eyes, the determined set of her chin, the way her brow furrowed when she was thinking. "Lily?" he asked carefully. "How old are you?" 6.5, she replied proudly, holding up her fingers. "I had my birthday last month. 6.5. The timeline was a perfect, terrible fit." "Do you need to get back home now?" he asked, trying to marshal his chaotic thoughts. "Not yet. Mom said I should stay here until I sell at least 10 oranges. But since you bought them all," she smiled, revealing a missing front tooth. "I guess I can go back now." Ethan saw his opening. "Can I walk with you to your street? It can be dangerous out here." Lily considered the offer for a moment, her small face set in a serious expression. "Mom told me not to go off with strangers. But you don't seem bad." "And you bought all my oranges," she added, as if that fact alone was a definitive character reference. "Okay, you can walk with me, but only to the corner of my street." Ethan helped her pack the remaining oranges into a faded cloth tote bag. Lily carefully tucked the money deep into an inner pocket of her coat, patting it twice to ensure its safety. "All set," she announced with an adorable seriousness. "We can go." As they walked side by side down the cracked sidewalk, past murals and under the rumble of the L train, Ethan struggled to contain the tempest of emotions raging inside him. If his suspicions were true, this little girl walking beside him, this brave, serious child, could be— No, he couldn't even complete the thought. It was too terrifying, too wonderful, too devastating all at once. "Do you like ice cream, Lily?" he asked, a desperate attempt at normal conversation. "I love it," her eyes lit up, "but I only get it on special occasions. Mom says it's expensive." Another sharp pang of guilt stabbed Ethan's chest. The thought of this child, his child, considering ice cream a rare luxury, was unbearable. And your dad? Does he help you and your mom? Lily's face shuddered, becoming instantly serious. I don't have a dad, at least not one I know. Mom never talks about him. Ethan swallowed hard, the lump in his throat feeling the size of a baseball. Sometimes, Lily continued thoughtfully, I imagine what he'd be like. Maybe he died, or maybe he lives really far away, or maybe she paused, looking up at Ethan with innocent curiosity. Maybe he's like you, like me. Ethan almost stumbled on a crack in the pavement. Yes, someone nice who helps people and buys all the oranges, even though he doesn't really want to take any. She smiled at him again, that gap-toothed grin that twisted his heart. Ethan felt his eyes sting and blinked rapidly, fighting back the unmanly burn of tears. After a few more minutes, they reached a narrower side street. Lily pointed to a red brick 3-flat at the end of the block. The facade was crumbling, with several windows patched with duct tape. The front door, just as she had described, was hanging slightly off its hinges, held shut by a rusty chain. That's where I live, she said, on the 3rd floor. Ethan stared at the building with a feeling of horror. How could vibrant, artistic Liv be living here? How could this child call this place home? You can leave me here, Lily said, stopping at the corner as promised. Thanks for walking with me, Mr. Blake. You're welcome, Lily, he replied, his voice strained, reluctant to let her go. Are you sure you'll be okay? Of course, she answered, with the unshakable confidence of a child. I live here. I know everyone. Ethan hesitated, fighting an overwhelming urge to follow her inside, to see Olivia with his own eyes, to demand answers. But the shock was still too raw. He needed a moment to process this earth-shattering discovery. He began, not sure what to say. Take care, all right, and tell your mom I hope she gets better soon. I will, she promised, giving a small wave before turning and scampering towards the broken door. Ethan stood frozen on the corner, watching until her small form disappeared inside. Then, as if moved by an unseen force, he circled the block, positioning himself where he could see the building without being seen. The 3rd floor. Lily had said the 3rd floor? Ethan counted the windows, his eyes landing on one with a small defiant plant on the sill, a single succulent in a brightly painted coffee can. Liv had always loved plants, especially the stubborn, resilient ones. He waited, watching. A few minutes later, Lily appeared at that very window. She placed something on the sill. It looked like the money he'd given her, and then vanished from sight. Ethan remained there for nearly an hour, motionless, the biting Chicago wind doing little to cool the fire in his soul. As the afternoon light began to fade, he saw Lily at the window twice more, once holding a glass of water, and another time just staring out at the street, as if searching for something or someone. The pain in his chest was a physical ache. Guilt, regret, confusion, and a towering anger at himself churned within him like a storm. Olivia was sick, possibly dying, living in squalor. And that child, Lily, could it really be? The math worked, the timing was perfect, and those eyes, his family's eyes, the ones that stared back at him from the mirror every morning. When he finally forced himself to move, the sun was sinking behind the skyline. He felt dazed, as if he'd been struck. He walked aimlessly, his thoughts in such a tumult that he hardly noticed where he was going. He passed a dive bar and was tempted to go in, to drown his thoughts in a glass of something strong. But the image of Lily, carefully counting her oranges to save money for her mother's surgery, flashed in his mind. Liv's surgery. No, he didn't deserve the temporary peace of oblivion. He kept walking. By the time he stopped, he was standing in front of his own building on the Gold Coast, a brutal, gleaming monument of steel and glass that stood in stark contrast to the crumbling brick he'd been watching just hours before. The doorman greeted him with practiced deference, but Ethan barely saw him, heading straight for the private elevator to his penthouse. Inside his cavernous apartment, with its panoramic views of the city and the lake, Ethan went straight to the bar and poured a heavy measure of whiskey. He drank it in one go, welcoming the burn in his throat, a physical pain that was a dull echo of the agony in his chest. "Claire," he murmured into the vast empty space, "what have I done to you?" He poured another drink, but didn't touch it, just stared into the amber liquid as if it held the answers he so desperately needed. 1,000 questions swirled in his mind. Why had Liv never told him she was pregnant? Why had she vanished? How had she ended up in such a desperate state? And Lily, brave, sweet Lily, could she truly be his daughter? Ethan set the glass down with a thud, suddenly disgusted with himself. What right did he have to feel anything? He had chosen his career, his ambition, his empire. Olivia had been the collateral damage of his relentless ascent. With heavy steps, he walked to his study and sat at the massive mahogany desk that had cost more than some people earn in a decade. He opened a drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside lay an engagement ring, a diamond that had never been offered. A single, hot tear traced a path down his cheek as he stared at the jewel, a symbol of a future he had sacrificed on the altar of his own ambition. In that moment, alone in his palace of solitude, Ethan Miller made a silent vow. Tomorrow he would go back. Tomorrow he would find the courage to face the ghosts of his past and maybe, just maybe, find a way to redeem himself for 7 years of unforgivable absence. But for now, the guilt was a crushing weight. For now he had to gather the shattered pieces of his soul, broken by the sight of a little girl with his eyes and her ailing mother. What he didn't yet know was that this chance encounter had irrevocably altered the course of his life, that nothing would ever be the same, that the man who would wake up the next morning would not be the same one who had walked the streets of Wicker Park that day. Ethan Miller, the lonely billionaire, had finally found something his money could never buy: the chance to fix the greatest mistake of his life. Ethan didn't sleep that night. His attempts were cut short by nightmares in which a green-eyed girl accused him of abandoning her while Olivia lay dying in a hospital bed. By 4 a.m, he gave up. He got up, went to the window, and stared at the city that never sleeps, a view he once found comforting, but which now seemed to mock his solitary wealth. The phone rang at 6, as always. It was Jennifer, his assistant of over a decade, reminding him of the meeting with Japanese investors scheduled for 9. "Cancel it," he said, his voice raw from exhaustion. "Excuse me?" Jen rarely heard him cancel anything, especially a meeting of that caliber. "Cancel everything today and tomorrow." "Ethan, these investors came from the other side of the world. Tell them I'm sick, a family emergency, whatever it takes." There was silence on the other end of the line. Jen knew him too well. "Is everything all right?" she finally asked, genuine concern in her voice, something few people in his life ever showed him. "No," he admitted, "but maybe it will be soon." He hung up before she could ask more questions. He felt strangely light after making that decision. For the first time in years, maybe decades, his professional commitments felt insignificant compared to what he had discovered. Ethan took a quick shower and dressed differently from his usual style. No tailored suits or Italian leather shoes. He chose dark jeans, a simple shirt, and sneakers. He wanted to appear approachable, not intimidating. In the mirror, a tired face stared back at him, eyes revealing a sleepless night and deep worries. "You can do this," he told his reflection without much conviction. He left the apartment and instead of calling his driver, hailed a cab. His first destination wasn't Olivia's building, but a grocery store on the way. While the driver chatted about the morning traffic and the forecast for rain, Ethan tried to recall what foods a child like Lily might enjoy. It had been a long time since he was a child himself, and it felt like a memory from another life. The supermarket was almost empty at that hour. Ethan grabbed a cart and started filling it with basics: rice, beans, pasta, sauces, meat, fresh vegetables, fruit. He stopped in the dairy aisle, remembering how Liv loved Greek yogurt with honey. Had her preferences changed? He grabbed several just in case. In the cereal aisle, he froze at the endless array of colorful options. Which one would Lily like best? He decided to take 3 different kinds, imagining her delight at having choices, something clearly uncommon in her life. He added chocolate, cookies, ice cream, all the things every child should have, without considering them luxuries. When he got to the checkout counter, his cart was so full he could barely push it. The young cashier raised her eyebrows at the sheer volume of items. "Big party?" she asked with a polite smile. "Something like that," Ethan replied. Leaving the store with heavy bags, Ethan realized how impractical his plan was. How would he carry all of this up to the apartment? He asked the waiting cab driver to help load the groceries, offering a generous tip. On the way to Wicker Park, Ethan felt his nervousness growing. What would he say to Olivia? How would he explain his sudden reappearance? What if she shut the door in his face? Worse, what if she confirmed that Lily was indeed his daughter? Or if she denied it? The cab stopped a block from the building at Ethan's request. He paid the fare, including a tip so large it made the driver's eyes widen, and refused the offer of help with the bags. He wanted to do this alone. The weight of the groceries was almost welcome, giving him a physical task to focus on besides his rising anxiety. He reached the red brick building out of breath, not just from the effort, but from the tension. The front door, as Lily had described, was partially broken, held in place by a chain. Ethan pushed it with his shoulder and entered. The lobby was dimly lit and smelled musty. A pile of unclaimed mail lay in a corner. Paint was peeling from the walls, revealing layers of previous colors, like an archaeological record of the building's decay. There was no elevator, just a narrow staircase spiraling upward. Ethan started climbing, the bags feeling heavier with each step. As he went up, he pictured Olivia making the same climb every day, perhaps carrying Lily when she was little, or lugging groceries while ill. The 3rd floor had a hallway with 4 doors. Ethan hesitated, realizing he had no idea which apartment was Olivia's. He looked at each door, trying to guess. One was decorated with colorful animal stickers at a child's height. It had to be that one. He moved closer and listened. Silence. He took a deep breath and knocked. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then he heard soft footsteps approach, and a childish voice asked, "Who is it?" Ethan's heart raced at the sound of Lily's voice. "It's Blake," he replied. "We met yesterday. I brought some things for you and your mom." There was a pause, then the sound of a chain being slid back and a key turning. The door opened a crack, limited by another security chain. Lily's face appeared in the gap, her green eyes widening when she saw Ethan. "Mr. Blake!" she exclaimed with genuine excitement. "What are you doing here?" "Like I promised, I brought some things," he said, lifting the bags for her to see. "Can I come in?" Lily bit her lower lip, the same gesture he had noticed the day before. "I have to ask Mom," she said, closing the door again. Ethan heard muffled voices on the other side, one high and excited, clearly Lily's, and another lower, hesitant, a voice he would recognize anywhere, even after 7 years. The door opened wider this time, but it wasn't Lily who appeared. Olivia looked thinner than he remembered, dark circles under her eyes. Her hair, once long and shiny, was now short and dull. But her eyes, the same green eyes that were now her daughter's, were as expressive as ever. And at that moment they expressed shock, disbelief, and something that looked like anger. "Blake," she said, her tone flat, hiding any emotion. "Claire," he answered, his voice almost a whisper. What are you doing here?" she interrupted, stepping protectively in front of Lily, who tried to peek around her. Ethan raised the bags again. "I brought some groceries," he said. "Food, mostly. I thought it might help." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "How did you find us? I met Lily yesterday selling oranges. She showed me your picture." Olivia closed her eyes briefly, as though processing the information. When she opened them again, there was a determination Ethan knew all too well. "Lily, go to your room, please," she said, not taking her eyes off Ethan. "But, Mom," the girl protested, "Mr. Blake brought food. And he was nice to me yesterday." Lily Claire repeated, her tone leaving no room for debate. "Now." The child lowered her head and walked away, dragging her feet. Once Lily was out of sight, Olivia took a step forward, still blocking the entrance. "What do you really want, Blake?" she asked, her voice now loaded with contained emotion. "You show up after 7 years with some groceries and think everything is okay." "No," he replied, feeling small under the intensity of her gaze. "I know nothing is okay. I know I made terrible mistakes. I just want to help now." Olivia let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Help now? Where was your help when I found out I was pregnant and you ran off to Shanghai without even leaving a contact number?" Her words hit Ethan like a physical blow. So it was true. Lily was his daughter. Part of him had known since the moment he saw those green eyes so much like his own. But hearing the confirmation from Olivia's lips brought an overwhelming sense of reality. "I didn't know," he said, his voice pleading to be believed. "Olivia, I swear on everything that matters, I had no idea you were pregnant." She studied him for a long moment, as if deciding whether to believe him. "Would it have made a difference?" she asked finally. "Your precious career, your climb to the top, would you have given it all up for a pregnant girlfriend and a child you didn't plan?" Ethan wanted to say yes, that he would have dropped everything, that he would have done things differently. But he couldn't. He couldn't lie to her now. "I don't know," he admitted, the truth hurting his throat. "I don't know who I was 7 years ago, but I know who I am now, and I want to do the right thing." Olivia observed him for a few more seconds, then opened the door completely. "You can leave the groceries," she said. "Thanks for that. Lily needs to eat well." Ethan placed the bags on the small entryway floor. The apartment he could glimpse behind Olivia was tiny but spotlessly clean, despite worn-out furniture and stained walls. "Can I see Lily?" he asked, his voice betraying his emotions. Just for a moment, Olivia crossed her arms. "Why? So you can disappear from her life again?" "I won't disappear," Ethan promised. "Never again." "Words," she said wearily. "You were always good with those." A coughing fit interrupted her. Olivia covered her mouth with her hand, her frail body shaking with the effort. Ethan took a step forward, instinctively wanting to help, but she raised her hand to stop him. "I'm fine," she said, once the coughing subsided, though her pal suggested otherwise. "You're not," Ethan insisted. "Lily told me about your condition, about the surgery you need." Olivia's face hardened. "I don't need your charity." "It's not charity," he insisted. "It's responsibility. She's my daughter, Olivia. I have both a right and an obligation to help." "A right?" Her voice rose dangerously. "What right do you have over a child you've never met, never saw growing up? You didn't hold her when she had a fever or comfort her when she had nightmares. You weren't there for any birthdays, any Christmases, any important moments in her life." Every word was a stab in Ethan's chest. The worst part was that she was absolutely right. "None," he admitted, his voice almost inaudible. "I have no rights. But Lily has every right to a better life than this. She has the right to a healthy mother." "And you," he hesitated, aware he was treading on dangerous ground. "You have the right to proper medical care." Olivia leaned against the doorframe, suddenly appearing exhausted. The brief burst of anger had consumed what little energy she had. "It's too late, Blake," she said, her voice now more sad than angry. "Too late for many things." A lump formed in his throat. "Too late for the treatment." "Maybe for that too," she answered vaguely. "But I was talking about us, about trusting you again. I'm not asking you to trust me," Ethan said, "just to let me help for Lily." Hearing her daughter's name seemed to affect Olivia. Her expression softened slightly. "Mom!" Lily's voice drifted from the hallway behind her. "Can I come out now? I want to see what Mr. Blake brought." Olivia closed her eyes for a moment as though mustering strength. When she opened them, there was a resigned look in them. "Yes, honey, you can come." Lily appeared at her mother's side almost instantly, as if she'd been waiting right there in the hallway. Her eyes lit up upon seeing the bags. "Wow, is all that for us?" Ethan couldn't hold back a smile at her excitement. "Yes, it's all for you." Lily immediately began rummaging through the bags, exclaiming joyfully at the colorful cereals and the ice cream, which she quickly took to put in the freezer before it melted. Olivia watched with a complex expression, a mixture of reluctant gratitude and lingering mistrust. When Lily disappeared into the tiny kitchen with the ice cream, Olivia turned to Ethan. "I don't want her getting attached to you," she said quietly. "Not if you're going to vanish at the first opportunity. She has enough problems without adding a father who just showed up." The words hurt, but Ethan knew she was right. "I won't vanish," he repeated, looking her directly in the eyes. "I know I can't prove that now. I can only ask that you let me demonstrate it with actions, not words." Olivia didn't respond immediately. Lily returned, holding an open tub of ice cream with a spoon sticking out. "Want some Mr. Blake?" she offered, extending the spoon toward him. It was such an innocent, generous gesture, this child, who had almost nothing, offering to share her first treat, that Ethan felt tears prick his eyes. He cleared his throat and shook his head softly. "Thank you, Lily, but it's all yours," he replied, his voice strained with emotion. "How about you, Mom?" Lily asked, offering the spoon to Olivia. A tired smile briefly lit Olivia's face. "Just a little bit?" She leaned forward and tasted the ice cream her daughter offered. For a fleeting moment, her expression brightened, and Ethan could see a hint of the Olivia he'd once known, young, full of life and dreams. "It's delicious," she told her daughter, who beamed with satisfaction. Ethan felt like an intruder, witnessing a private moment between mother and child. It was a harsh reminder of all the similar moments he had missed. "I'll leave you two now," he said softly. "But I'd like to come back tomorrow, if that's okay." Olivia looked up at him, distrust evident in her eyes, but now tinged with something like resignation. "I can't stop you," she replied. "But don't make any promises to Lily you don't intend to keep." Ethan nodded, accepting her condition. He glanced at Lily, who was watching the adults interact with curiosity. "See you later, Lily," he said. "I hope I can come back and see you tomorrow." "Will you bring more ice cream?" she asked hopefully. Ethan smiled. "If your mom allows it?" Olivia said nothing, but her look spoke volumes. "Don't let her down." Ethan stepped back into the hallway, his chest heavy with conflicting emotions. On the one hand, a sharp pain at realizing what he had lost, 7 years of his daughter's life. On the other, a fragile hope for a new beginning. "I'll find the best doctors for you," he said to Olivia before leaving. "That's not negotiable." For a moment it seemed she was about to protest again, but then another coughing fit struck her, this time stronger than the previous one. Lily immediately set aside the ice cream and ran to hold her mother's hand, fear evident on her small face. The sight broke Ethan's heart. It was obvious the situation was more serious than Olivia admitted. When the coughing subsided, she simply nodded, a barely perceptible gesture of acceptance. Ethan left the building feeling both lighter and heavier at the same time. The truth was now laid bare, raw and painful. Lily was his daughter. Olivia was truly ill, and he had 7 years of absence to make up for, if that was even possible. As he walked down the busy street, he mentally went over his next steps, calls to his medical contacts, arranging immediate treatment for Olivia, consultations with lawyers about his rights and responsibilities as a father. Part of him, the cold, calculating side that had built his empire, advised caution, paternity tests, verification of Olivia's true medical condition, protection against possible excessive financial demands. But for the first time in his adult life, Ethan Miller silenced that voice. It didn't matter whether Lily was biologically his, though he was certain she was. It didn't matter how much Olivia's treatment would cost. It didn't matter about legal hassles or complications. The only thing that mattered was that broken family he had, intentionally or not, helped destroy. And now he had a chance, perhaps his last chance, to fix it. When he finally hailed a cab to take him home, Ethan realized he was smiling. It was a sad smile, marked by regret, but a smile nonetheless. For the first time in many years, he felt like he was doing something truly meaningful. Nightfall was settling over Chicago when Ethan returned to his apartment. He poured himself a drink and went out onto the balcony, watching the city light up below. Somewhere in that sea of lights, a green-eyed little girl might be thinking about him. Tomorrow would be a new day. Tomorrow he would start building bridges over the 7-year chasm. Tomorrow he would face Olivia's resistance and try to earn Lily's affection. But tonight was for decisions, and Ethan Miller had decided no more running away, no more choosing ambition over love, no more abandoning those who needed him. This evening, high above his lonely empire, he made a silent vow to the stars. He would be the father Lily deserved and the man Olivia needed him to be. Even if it was too late for some things, as Olivia had said, he would do everything in his power to make sure it wasn't too late for those that truly mattered. Ethan didn't sleep again that night. His attempts were interrupted by thoughts of Olivia and Lily, of lost time, of Olivia's health condition that she tried to hide, but which was obvious in every tired movement, every labored breath. At 5:15 in the morning, he gave up trying. He went to his study, turned on his computer, and began researching the best hospitals in the city, specialists for every possible condition Olivia might have. Without knowing her exact diagnosis, he prepared for every possibility. He made a few calls, even at that hour, to people who wouldn't mind being woken up by Ethan Miller. His name opened doors, something he had always known, but had rarely used for anything beyond business. Now that power would serve a different purpose. By 8 hours in the morning, he had a list of doctors ready to see Olivia immediately. Hospitals prepared to admit her to private rooms, specialists standing by for his call. All he needed now was to persuade her to accept his help. Ethan took a quick shower, dressed as simply as the day before, and went out. On the way, he stopped at a bakery and bought fresh breakfast items, bread, pastries, fruit. He remembered how Olivia used to love croissants with raspberry jam and made sure to include them. The sky was overcast, threatening rain. Ethan quickened his pace, feeling an inexplicable urgency, as if every minute was precious. He arrived at the red brick building a little after 9, quickly climbing the 3 flights of stairs. That was when he heard it. The sound of a child crying, a desperate cry coming from Olivia's apartment. It wasn't the cry of a child upset or in minor pain. It was the sound of pure fear, of utter despair. Ethan felt ice in his veins. He dropped the bags in the hallway and ran to the door, pounding on it. "Lily Claire!" he shouted, panic rising in his voice. The crying continued, broken by sobs. Then hurried footsteps approached, and Lily's trembling voice asked, "Who was there?" "It's Blake. What happened? Are you all right?" The door opened immediately. Lily stood there in her pajamas, her face red and swollen from crying, hair tousled. Her green eyes were wide with terror. "Mr. Blake," she sobbed. "My mom won't wake up. I tried everything, but she won't answer." Ethan didn't wait for more explanations. He stepped inside, following Lily to the small bedroom where Olivia slept. The room was simple, with only a bed, a nightstand, and an old dresser. Water stains marked the walls, but they were adorned with colorful drawings. Obviously, Lily's work. Olivia lay on the bed, pale as paper. Her breathing was so shallow that for one terrifying moment, Ethan thought he was too late. He rushed over, sitting on the edge of the bed and checking her pulse. It was there, weak and irregular, but present. "Olivia," he called, gently patting her cheek. "Olivia, wake up." She didn't respond. Lily clung to Ethan's waist, shaking. She was coughing so much last night, the girl explained, words broken by sobs. "Then this morning, she didn't get up to take me to school. I thought she was just tired, but when I came to check, she wouldn't respond." Ethan put an arm around Lily's shoulders, trying to project a calm he didn't feel. "How long has she been like this?" he asked, already taking his phone out of his pocket. "I don't know," Lily replied, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "I think it's been about an hour since I started trying to wake her up." Ethan dialed one of the contacts he'd prepared earlier. When they answered, his voice took on an authoritative tone Lily had never heard before. "Dr. Anderson, this is Ethan Miller. I need an ambulance to Wicker Park immediately." "It's an emergency." He gave the address and hung up, turning to Lily. "I'm taking your mom to the hospital right now. I need you to be strong and help me." "Okay." Lily nodded, still teary-eyed, but filled with a childlike trust that made Ethan's heart ache. She trusted him instantly, no questions asked, just like only a child can. "What do I do?" she asked, straightening her small shoulders as if bracing for an important mission. "Grab some clothes for you and your mom, just enough for a few days. Toothbrushes, a comb, anything important. Can you do that?" Lily nodded again and ran off to fulfill the task. Ethan turned back to Olivia. She burned with fever, her forehead hot under his hand. Her fingers, by contrast, were icy cold. He felt fear surging, mixed with a corrosive guilt. What if it was too late? What if all those years of neglect had cost Olivia her life? "No," he muttered to himself, "that's not going to happen." He pulled out his phone again and dialed another contact. "Jen, get in touch with Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Tell Dr. Sullivan I'm on my way with a critical patient. I want the best team ready to receive her." When he hung up, Lily was back holding a small worn backpack. "I put our things in here," she said, showing him the bag. "And Mom's medicine, too." "Great job," Ethan praised her, trying to smile reassuringly. "Now, I'm going to carry your mom downstairs. An ambulance is coming, but we can't wait." Without hesitation, Ethan wrapped Olivia in a blanket and lifted her into his arms. She felt alarmingly light, as if the illness had consumed not just her strength, but her very substance. Her head fell against his chest, and a faint moan escaped her chapped lips. "Come on, Lily, stay close to me." Together they made their way down the stairs. Ethan, careful not to jostle Olivia unnecessarily. Lily followed, a small hand gripping his shirt, as if afraid he might disappear too. When they reached the street, Ethan spotted a taxi passing by and flagged it urgently. The driver stopped, looking suspiciously at the unconscious woman in Ethan's arms. "Northwestern Memorial Hospital as fast as possible," he ordered, already opening the back door and gently placing Olivia on the seat. "It's an emergency." Something in his tone or the urgency of the situation convinced the driver, who nodded and unlocked the doors. Ethan helped Lily in and climbed in himself, keeping Olivia cradled in his arms. "If you get us there in under 15 minutes, God, I'll triple your fare," he added. That was all it took. The taxi sped off, diving into morning traffic with renewed determination. During the ride, Ethan kept his fingers on Olivia's pulse, counting the faint beats as if he could keep her alive by sheer force of will. Lily sat quietly beside him, eyes fixed on her mother's face, clutching her backpack tight. "She's going to get better, right?" she asked at one point, her voice so soft Ethan almost didn't hear. He wanted to say yes, that everything would be okay, that her mom would pull through just like she always did. But he couldn't lie to those green eyes so much like his own. "I'll do everything I can to make sure of that," he finally replied, knowing it was the only honest promise he could make. Lily seemed to accept this answer, nodding gravely. Ethan realized with a mixture of admiration and sadness that this child had grown up far too quickly, forced to grasp realities no child should face. The taxi screeched to a halt outside the hospital's emergency entrance. As promised, a medical team was already waiting outside. 2 nurses with a gurney, a doctor in a white coat, and Jen, Ethan's assistant, who had arrived beforehand to ensure everything was in place. Ethan stepped out of the taxi carrying Olivia, refusing the gurney for the moment. "Dr. Sullivan?" he asked, addressing the doctor. "Yes," the man replied, already assessing the patient visually. "We'll take her in for evaluation right away." Ethan finally placed Olivia on the gurney, but didn't let go of her hand. Lily jumped out of the taxi and ran to the other side of the gurney, grabbing her mother's other hand. As the medical team began pushing the gurney inside the hospital, Dr. Anderson bombarded Ethan with questions about Olivia's medical history, her symptoms, how long she'd been unconscious. Ethan answered what he could, painfully aware of how little he actually knew about the woman who had once been closest to him. Surprisingly, Lily filled in many of the gaps. "She takes these," she said, pulling a small case out of her backpack and handing it to the doctor 3 times a day. "And she uses this inhaler when she can't breathe." Dr. Anderson examined the medications quickly, his expression growing serious. "Does your mom have any heart or lung problems that you know of, sweetie?" he asked gently. Lily nodded. "Both. She says her heart gets weak sometimes and her lungs fill up with water. That's why she coughs so much." Ethan felt the floor drop out from under him. Heart failure and pulmonary edema. Serious conditions that could be fatal without proper treatment. "How long has she had these symptoms?" the doctor asked, now mostly directing his questions to Lily as they entered an exam room. "Always," the little girl answered simply. "As long as I can remember." Years then, Olivia had been sick for years without proper treatment, fighting on her own while raising a child Ethan hadn't even known existed. The guilt hit him like an avalanche. While he was amassing billions and building his global empire, the woman he had loved was wasting away, saving every penny to care for the daughter he didn't know about. A nurse approached, kindly asking them to wait outside while the team performed initial procedures. Ethan hesitated, reluctant to leave Olivia, but he knew the doctors needed space to work. "Let's go, Lily," he said, extending a hand to the girl. "We'll wait out there. The doctors will take good care of your mom." Lily took one last look at Olivia, then clung to Ethan's hand, letting him guide her to the waiting area. Jen followed discreetly, handling everything behind the scenes as she always did. They sat on cushioned chairs in a private waiting area, separated from the general public by tasteful partitions. Jen brought water and juice, also offering snacks that Lily declined with a shake of her head. "I'm not hungry," she explained. "My stomach feels funny." Ethan nodded, understanding perfectly. His own stomach was in knots, filled with anxiety and fear. "Mr. Blake?" Lily broke the silence after a few minutes. "Is my mom going to die?" The question, asked with brutal childish honesty, punched the air out of Ethan. He turned to face her, seeing the genuine fear in her eyes, his eyes, and wanting desperately to shield her from all pain. "Not if I can help it," he said with fierce determination that surprised even him. "This hospital has some of the best doctors in the world, and they'll do everything they can to help your mom." Lily studied his face for a moment, as if searching for any hint of deception or hesitation. Then, to Ethan's surprise, she moved closer and rested her head against his arm. "Thank you for helping us," she said softly. "I prayed for someone to come." Ethan felt a lump in his throat and on impulse placed his arm around her shoulders, drawing her closer. "I'm here now," he promised, "and I'm not going anywhere." They remained like that in silence for almost an hour. Eventually, Lily accepted some orange juice and a sandwich Jen offered, eating slowly without much enthusiasm. Ethan kept his eyes on the doors Olivia had passed through, as if sheer will could produce news. Jen sat on the other side, discreetly, fielding the endless calls and messages coming to Ethan's phone, shielding him from the outside world that kept spinning, unaware of the drama unfolding there. Finally, Dr. Anderson emerged, still in his white coat and holding a clipboard. His face was serious but not grim, a slight relief to Ethan, who had learned to interpret medical expressions over the years. Ethan stood immediately, Lily following suit, clinging tightly to his hand with surprising strength for someone so small. "Mr. Miller," the doctor began, "we've managed to stabilize your Ms. Sterling." Ethan exhaled the breath he hadn't realized he was holding. What exactly is wrong with her? Dr. Anderson glanced at Lily, then back at Ethan, clearly unsure how much detail to reveal in front of a child. Ethan hesitated, not wanting to frighten her, but also knowing Lily deserved to know what was happening to her mother. "Lily," he said, crouching to meet her gaze, "I need to talk to the doctor about your mom's condition. Can you wait with Jen for a few minutes? I promise I'll explain everything afterward in a way you can understand." The girl bit her lip, looking from the doctor to Ethan, then to Jen, who smiled encouragingly. "Okay," she finally agreed. "But don't take too long, I promise," Ethan said, giving her hand a gentle squeeze before letting go. Jen guided Lily toward a small play area in the corner of the waiting room, far enough that she couldn't hear the conversation, but still within Ethan's sight. He turned back to the doctor, bracing himself for the worst. "How serious is it?" he asked directly. "Doctor?" Anderson didn't hesitate. "Serious, but not hopeless. Miss Sterling has dilated cardiomyopathy with resulting congestive heart failure. She also has significant pulmonary edema and signs of bacterial pneumonia, which appears to be the immediate trigger for her current decompensation." Ethan absorbed the information, his mind automatically sorting through options the way it did in business. Prognosis. With immediate and aggressive treatment, the chances are good. We've already started broad-spectrum antibiotics for the pneumonia, along with medication to improve her heart function. The pulmonary edema is responding to diuretics and long-term. The doctor hesitated slightly. Cardiomyopathy is a chronic condition. From what I can tell from the preliminary tests, her heart has suffered significant damage, likely from going untreated for so long. Will she need a transplant? Ethan went straight to the point. It's too early to say for sure, but it can't be ruled out. For now, we need to focus on stabilizing her and treating the pneumonia. I recommend a series of more detailed tests once she's strong enough to handle them. Ethan nodded, already making mental decisions. "Do whatever it takes, Dr. Anderson. Cost is not an issue. I want the best team, the best specialists, the best treatments available. If there's any experimental option that might help, I want to know about it." "Understood, Mr. Miller. I've already alerted our cardiology team. Dr. Patel, the department head, is on his way. When can I see her?" "Soon. We're moving her to the ICU for at least 24 hours of close monitoring. After she's settled, we'll allow brief visits." Ethan thanked the doctor, who promised to return with updates. Alone for a moment, Ethan allowed himself to feel the full weight of the situation. Olivia could have died today. Probably would have if he hadn't shown up. The thought was unbearable. He took several deep breaths, composing himself before going back to Lily. She was watching him intently from across the room, ignoring the tablet of games Jen had offered. When Ethan approached, Lily immediately stood. "How's Mom?" she asked, her wide green eyes scared but determined to know the truth. Ethan sat beside her, choosing his words carefully, aiming for a 6-year-old's level of understanding. "Your mom is really sick, Lily," he began gently. "Her heart isn't working as well as it should, and her lungs are affected too. Plus, she got an infection, kind of like a very bad flu that made everything worse." Lily nodded gravely. "I knew she was getting worse. She tried to hide it, but I could tell. The child's perceptiveness was both admirable and heartbreaking." "The doctors are taking care of her now," Ethan continued. "They gave her medicine to fight the infection and help her heart work better. She'll have to stay in the hospital for a few days, maybe more." "Can I see her?" Lily asked, her voice small but hopeful. "Soon as the doctors have her settled in a special room. For now, we have to be patient." Lily was quiet for a moment, processing the information. Then, to Ethan's surprise, she leaned in and hugged him, pressing her face against his chest. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice muffled by his shirt. Ethan wrapped his arms around her, feeling a fierce protectiveness he had never experienced before. In that moment, he knew he would do anything, absolutely anything, to protect this child. "I know," he answered softly. "I'm scared too. But we're in this together now, you and me." We'll take care of your mom together." Lily lifted her head, those green eyes, Ethan's eyes, brimming with tears, yet filled with fragile hope. "Promise?" she asked. "I promise," Ethan replied, sealing a commitment he knew would change his life forever. 3 days had passed since Olivia's admission to the hospital. The pneumonia was starting to respond to the antibiotics, but her heart condition still required intense monitoring. The doctors mentioned weeks of hospitalization and possibly surgery to implant a ventricular assist device. During this time, Ethan completely reorganized his life. He canceled business trips, delegated responsibilities, and set up a makeshift office in the hospital suite he had arranged for Olivia. But the most surprising development for everyone, including himself, was how naturally he assumed care for Lily. On the first night, when it became clear Olivia wouldn't be discharged anytime soon, Ethan faced a dilemma. What to do about Lily? The child had no other relatives, and the one neighbor who sometimes watched her, Mrs. Smith, was traveling. "You can stay with me while your mom gets better," he offered, hesitant, fearing she might reject him. "I have a guest room that can be yours for now." Lily looked at her mother asleep in the hospital bed, then back at Ethan. Her green eyes seemed to be weighing all the possibilities. "Mom would want me to be with someone safe," she finally said, with a maturity that continued to surprise him. "Can I bring my teddy bear, Theodore?" Ethan felt a surge of relief. "Of course you can. And anything else you want." That same night, after a quick visit to her apartment to pick up Lily's things, including Teddy, a scruffy brown bear that seemed to be her closest companion, they headed to Ethan's Gold Coast apartment. Lily's eyes widened as they walked through the marble lobby with its high ceiling and crystal chandeliers. "Do you live in a castle?" she asked in a hushed voice, clinging to Ethan's hand while she took in the surroundings. Ethan smiled. "It's not a castle, just an old building where rich people live." "Are you rich?" The child's direct question, typical of a 6-year-old, took Ethan by surprise. "Yes," he admitted. "I have a lot of money." Lily nodded, absorbing the information. "Then why don't Mom and I have any?" The innocent question hit Ethan like a physical blow. How could he explain to a 6-year-old the complicated failings of adults, the choices that lead to separate paths, the wounded pride, the broken communication? "It's complicated," he finally managed. "But I promise I'll explain better when you're a bit older." To his surprise, Lily seemed satisfied, just nodding again. Inside the apartment, he showed her the guest room, which Jen had quickly furnished with a few basic kids' items, a colorful lamp, storybooks, and some simple toys. "This can be your room while you're here," he said. "Tomorrow, we can buy more things you like." Lily explored the space curiously, placing Teddy carefully on the king-size bed that looked absurdly big for her little body. "It's nice," she commented, "but it doesn't feel real." Ethan understood exactly what she meant. The room, with its elegant but impersonal decor, lacked warmth and history, the marks of a lived-in home. It wasn't like the tiny cramped apartment she shared with Olivia, which was full of love despite its poverty. That first night was strange for both of them. Ethan prepared a simple dinner, macaroni and cheese, one of the few things he knew how to cook, and tried to keep a natural conversation going with Lily. The child answered politely, but there was a distance in her demeanor, a worry overshadowing her thoughts. At bedtime, he helped her brush her teeth and change clothes, feeling entirely awkward and unprepared for the task. "Your mom will get better," he said as he tucked her in, trying to offer some comfort. Lily nodded, hugging Teddy. "She's strong," she answered simply. "Good night, Mr. Blake." "You can just call me Blake if you want," he offered. She thought about it for a moment. "Okay, good night, Blake." The days that followed involved a series of small adjustments. Ethan, used to running multinational corporations, discovered that managing a 6-year-old's routine was just as challenging. There were schedules to keep, meals to prepare, baths to supervise. He hired a personal assistant specifically to help with Lily, but Ethan insisted on being as hands-on as possible. For her part, Lily watched everything with curious eyes, silently adapting to her new environment. She was surprisingly easygoing, maybe because she had grown up taking on responsibilities beyond her years, or maybe because she instinctively understood how serious her mother's situation was. Every day they visited Olivia in the hospital. The visits were short, as she spent most of the time asleep, often under the influence of medication that left her groggy. But those brief moments were the highlight of Lily's day. The child would chat to her mother about everything she'd done, showing drawings and small gifts she'd made. During one such visit, Ethan watched from a corner as Lily whispered something into her unconscious mother's ear. The intimacy of that moment, the absolute trust that even in her sleep Olivia was listening, stirred something deep inside him. He realized then he would do anything to protect that bond. On the third day, things began to change between them. A routine had formed. In the morning, they went to see Olivia, who was awake for slightly longer periods each day, though still very weak. In the afternoon, while Ethan worked remotely, Lily occupied herself with the new toys and books he'd bought. In the evening, they'd have a simple dinner and talk about the day. It was during one of these dinners that the first real breakthrough occurred. "Blake," Lily said, pushing the macaroni around on her plate. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," he replied, setting his fork down to show she had his full attention. "How did you meet my mom?" The question caught Ethan off guard, causing him to choke on the wine he was sipping. When he recovered, he saw Lily watching him with a mix of curiosity and patience, waiting for his answer. For a brief moment, he considered making something up, a simpler or edited version of the truth, but something in her gaze, so much like his own, demanded honesty. "Your mom and I met a long time ago," he began, choosing his words carefully. "I had just started my company, and she worked at a coffee shop near my first office." Lily listened intently, absorbing every word. "Every day I went there for coffee, and every day she gave me this special smile only she could give." Ethan continued feeling a pang of nostalgia and sorrow. "One day, after almost a month, I finally got the courage to ask her out." "Did she say yes?" Lily asked, leaning forward, completely engrossed in the story. "Not the first time?" Ethan said, smiling at the memory. "She said she was too busy. So I asked again the next day, and the next that, by the fourth day, she finally said yes, just so I'd stop asking." Lily giggled, a crystal-clear sound that lit up the usually quiet apartment with unexpected joy. "We dated for almost 2 years," Ethan went on, now entering more difficult territory. "They were the best years of my life. Your mom is special. She has a way of making any place feel like home." "I know," Lily said, nodding knowingly. "She makes the best hot chocolate in the world, even when we don't have real chocolate." Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. "That sounds exactly like her." "And then, Lily, why didn't you stay together?" Ethan took a deep breath. This was the hardest part, but he knew he owed the truth to this child. "I made mistakes, Lily. Big ones. My company started growing, and I let work become more important than anything, more important than your mom, more important than building a life together. I traveled constantly, and I was barely there when she needed me." Lily kept her gaze fixed on him without judgment, just trying to understand. "In the end, I got a business opportunity in China and accepted it without really discussing it with her. It was supposed to be 6 months, but ended up being a year when I came back." "She was gone," Lily concluded. Ethan nodded, amazed at her insight. "Yes, she was gone. I lost her because of the wrong choices I made." Silence hung between them as Lily processed the information. Then, to Ethan's surprise, she reached out and gently touched his hand. "But now you're here," she said simply. "And you're helping Mom. And you're taking care of me." Ethan felt tears burn at the corners of his eyes. "Yes," he managed to say. "I'm here now, and I want to do things differently this time. If your mom will let me. If you'll let me." Lily considered this with the seriousness of someone much older than 6. "I think you deserve a second chance," she finally declared. "Everyone does if they're really sorry." Tio, something shifted between them in that moment. It wasn't a dramatic revelation or an instant transformation, but the beginning of trust. Still fragile, but real. A bridge beginning to form over the gulf of lost years, supported by honesty and Ethan's genuine desire to do better. Later that night, when he tucked Lily into bed, she asked him to read her a story, and for the first time she allowed him to sit at the edge of the bed instead of on the chair farther away. A small gesture, but it meant everything. "This was your mom's favorite story when we were younger," Ethan said, showing her the book he'd chosen. A classic children's tale he remembered Olivia mentioning once. Lily's eyes lit up at this unexpected connection to her mom. "Really? She never told me that. There are lots of things you two still have to discover about each other," Ethan said softly. "And plenty of stories we can create together from now on." As he read, he watched Lily's eyes grow heavy until she finally drifted off. Teddy clutched to her chest. Ethan stayed there for a long time, gazing at the face of the daughter he was only just beginning to know, awed by how someone so small and fragile could hold such strength and wisdom. Day by day, small moments like that built a bond between them that Ethan had never experienced before. A bond forged not from grand gestures or expensive gifts, but from steady presence, honesty, and the simple routines they shared. The quiet affection that grew solid yet gentle, like a plant seeking sunlight after a long time in the dark. A week had passed since Olivia's hospitalization. Her health showed encouraging signs of improvement, although the doctors remained cautious. The lung infection responded well to antibiotics, and the heart medications seemed to be stabilizing her condition, at least for the time being. For Ethan and Lily, those days created a near-familial routine. Mornings began with breakfast together. Ethan had learned to make fun-shaped pancakes that made Lily smile. Then they would visit Olivia at the hospital, spending a few hours by her side. In the afternoons, while Ethan worked in his makeshift office, Lily colored or read the new books he'd bought for her. Evenings brought simple dinners, followed by bedtime stories. Gradually, the awkward moments became fewer, and a genuine connection began to blossom. Lily no longer hesitated to ask for help when she needed it, and Ethan no longer felt entirely lost in taking care of her daily needs. On this particular night, while waiting for a pizza delivery at Lily's request, they sat in the spacious living room overlooking the park. Lily was busy drawing, her tongue peeking out in concentration. Ethan was on his laptop, occasionally glancing up to watch her. "What are you drawing?" he finally asked, curious about her intense focus. Lily held up the paper to show a simple yet expressive sketch of 3 stick figures, one large, one medium, and one small, all holding hands. "It's us," she explained. "Me as Mom and you?" Something twisted in Ethan's chest, a feeling for which he had no name. It was both painful and comforting. "That's a beautiful drawing," he said, his voice slightly husky. "Can I keep it when you're done?" Lily nodded, resuming her work with renewed dedication. A few minutes later, she broke the silence with a question that seemed to come out of nowhere. "Blake, do you think my dad is dead?" The question hit him like a punch to the stomach. He closed his laptop slowly, buying time to think. Lily was watching him with those inquisitive green eyes, his eyes awaiting his response. "Why do you ask that?" he managed finally. Lily shrugged, but there was tension in her small shoulders that betrayed her casual tone. "Sometimes I think he must be, because if he wasn't, why would he never look for us? But other times," she paused, looking back at her drawing. "Other times, I think maybe he just didn't care enough." Ethan felt as though something were being ripped out of his chest. The idea that his daughter had spent years imagining her father as dead or worse uncaring was almost unbearable. "What does your mom say about him?" he asked cautiously, aware that he was treading on extremely delicate ground. Lily lifted her eyes again, and the simplicity of her answer was more devastating than any elaboration. "Mom never talked about my dad. I never knew who he was." Ethan felt the impact of those words like a cold wave crashing over him. Olivia had never mentioned his existence to Lily, not even to create a story about him. She had completely erased him from their narrative as though he had never existed. It was an absence so complete and deliberate that Ethan finally understood the depth of Olivia's hurt. She'd rather raise her daughter without any father figure than share any memory of him. "Have you ever asked her?" he inquired softly. Lily bit her lower lip, that gesture he now recognized as his own, reflected in his daughter. "I asked once when I was 5. My friends at school were talking about their dads, and I wanted to know about mine." She paused, recalling, "Mom got really sad, really sad. She cried all night. I never asked again." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the pain of that memory spread through him. Olivia crying alone at night, a confused and frightened Lily. Both outcomes of his choices, his absence. "Do you think he was a bad person?" Lily asked, her small voice cutting through his thoughts. Ethan opened his eyes to find her watching him intently, as if his words might unlock the mystery that had surrounded her entire short life. "No," he replied carefully. "I think sometimes people make mistakes, really big ones, that end up hurting the people they love, even if they don't mean to." "Like the mistakes you made with my mom?" Lily asked, her penetrating gaze making Ethan feel completely transparent. "Yes," he admitted. "Like those?" Lily seemed to ponder that deeply before she spoke again. "You know, sometimes I make up stories about him," she confessed softly. "In my head, sometimes he's an astronaut who had to go into space on a really important mission, or an explorer lost in the jungle." Or she hesitated, her voice suddenly shy. "Or someone like you." Ethan felt his heart almost stop. "Like me?" Lily nodded, blushing. "Someone nice and who tells stories and makes funny pancakes. Who takes care of us when we need him." In that moment, Ethan experienced both pain and joy in the most intense way. He wanted to scoop her into a hug, to shout the truth, to declare everything. But he couldn't. It wasn't his secret to tell, not without Olivia. It wouldn't be fair to either of them. Instead, he gently tucked a rebellious curl behind Lily's ear, a gesture he had seen Olivia do so many times during their hospital visits. "Any man would be lucky to be your father, Lily," he said quietly. "And if he knew about you, I'm sure he'd be the proudest person in the world." She rewarded him with a smile as bright as a ray of sunshine cutting through dense clouds. Their conversation shifted to lighter topics when the pizza arrived, but something deeper had changed between them, a stronger understanding, a more solid trust. Ethan knew he had been tested in some way, and for now, he had passed. Later that night, after tucking Lily into bed, Ethan sat in his office with an untouched glass of whiskey, reflecting on everything he had learned. Through subtle questions during the week, through conversations with Jen, who had dug into Olivia's background, and now through Lily's revelations, Ethan had pieced together a grim picture of the years that had passed. When Olivia disappeared from his life, she had been in the early stages of pregnancy, probably not even aware of it at first. Once she did know, she chose to face it alone rather than look for him. She moved multiple times, took precarious jobs while her health slowly deteriorated. There were periods with no fixed address, nights spent in shelters, real hunger when money ran out before the month's end. A constant battle against a healthcare system that provided inadequate support. And throughout it all, there was Lily, a child growing up in conditions no child should ever endure, yet somehow developing a resilience, intelligence, and kindness that defied her circumstances. Ethan raised his glass, watching the lamp's light refract in the amber liquid. His fortune, his empire, all seemed suddenly empty compared to what he could have had, to what he could have given them. That night, alone in his luxurious office, he made a silent vow that went beyond his previous promises. His mission wasn't just to fix the past, though that was still crucial. It was to build a future where Lily would no longer have to invent stories about an absent father, a future where Olivia wouldn't have to carry her burdens alone until she collapsed, a future where they could be the family they were meant to be all along. While Olivia slept in her hospital bed, slowly regaining her strength, and Lily dreamed in the next room, Ethan finally understood his true purpose. It wasn't to create wealth, build companies, or accumulate power. It was to love and protect these two people who, even in his absence, had shaped him completely. And he promised himself with every ounce of determination he possessed that as long as he lived, they would never again know hunger, homelessness, or abandonment. They would never fight alone. They would never fear tomorrow. That promise made in the silent hours of the night sealed a transformation that began the moment he first saw Lily's green eyes selling oranges on a random street corner in Chicago. The hospital room was quiet that morning, save for the steady beeping of the machines monitoring Olivia's vital signs. Ethan sat in the chair beside her bed, focused on his laptop, while she slept. 2 weeks had passed since she'd been admitted, and the doctors were pleased with her progress. The pneumonia was fully under control, and her heart condition was stable, though long-term treatment options needed to be discussed. Lily was at school. Ethan had found a private institution near the hospital that agreed to enroll her mid-semester. Initially hesitant, the girl adjusted surprisingly well, especially after Ethan explained they could visit Olivia every day after school. A subtle movement in the bed caught his attention. Olivia shifted slightly, her fingers twitching on the white blanket. Ethan shut his laptop and leaned forward, watching her carefully. Over the past few days, she had woken a few times, but only briefly, still groggy from medication. This time, however, when her eyes opened, there was a clarity in them that hadn't been there before. Olivia blinked several times, adjusting to the soft light that filtered in through the half-open blinds. Her gaze swept the room until it landed on Ethan. "Water!" she croaked, her voice rough from disuse. Ethan jumped up immediately, grabbing the cup and straw he kept ready on the bedside table. He helped her raise her head slightly and brought the straw to her lips. Olivia took a few sips, then closed her eyes for a moment, as though the simple act of drinking water was the most precious relief. "Thank you," she said when she finished, settling back onto the pillow. Ethan returned the cup to the table and sat down, unsure what to say. Over the 2 weeks she'd been hospitalized, he'd envisioned this moment countless times, what he'd say, how he'd explain everything that happened, how he'd discuss Lily. But now, confronted by Olivia's direct gaze, none of his rehearsed words felt right. "How long?" she asked, breaking the silence. 2 weeks, he answered. "You had acute pneumonia on top of your heart condition." It was scary. Olivia nodded slightly, as though she had expected it. "Lily, she's fine. She's in school right now. She stayed with me while you were unconscious." A shadow of worry crossed Olivia's face. "School? I enrolled her at Dalton a few blocks from here. It's a good school. She's adapting well, all things considered," Ethan explained, attempting to reassure her. "We've been visiting you every day." Olivia was quiet for a few moments, processing. When she spoke again, her voice was stronger, but laced with suppressed emotion. "Thank you. You saved my life, but old wounds still exist." The honesty in that statement cut deeply. There was no open accusation in her tone, but a clear acknowledgement that gratitude didn't erase the past. "I know," he replied, equally honest. "I don't expect you to forget or forgive easily. I just want to help however I can." Olivia studied him for a moment, her green eyes so much like Lily's, searching his face as though looking for something specific. "Why?" she finally asked. "After all this time, why now?" Ethan could have said many things, mentioned the chance encounter with Lily, or talked about seeking redemption or regret. But he chose the simplest truth. "Because I finally understand what really matters," he said. "And it's none of the things I spent years chasing." Olivia didn't respond, but something in her gaze softened almost imperceptibly. She turned her head toward the window, watching the blue sky and drifting clouds. "Did the doctors say when I can go home?" she asked after a moment. Ethan hesitated. "In a few more days, probably." "But Olivia, about your home? What about it?" "I moved your and Lily's things into an apartment I rented near here temporarily," he explained cautiously. "I thought it would be more practical during your recovery, being close to the hospital and Lily's school." He braced for anger, righteous indignation that he'd taken such a major step without consulting her, but Olivia just nodded faintly. "Makes sense," she said. "Thank you." Silence fell between them again, less tense this time, but still laden with words unspoken. Ethan wanted to ask about the past, about the lost years, about Lily. He wanted to confess he knew that he had figured it out. But something held him back. Respect for her timing, for Olivia's need to face the present before confronting the past. "Could you bring me a mirror?" she asked, interrupting his thoughts. Ethan found a small mirror in the bedside drawer and handed it to her. Olivia observed her reflection with a neutral expression, her thinner face, dull hair, pale skin. She showed no surprise or sadness, just acceptance. "I came close this time, didn't I?" she asked, handing the mirror back. "Yes," he said, remembering the fear he'd felt. "But you're strong, Olivia. You always have been." A fragile smile, her first since waking, crossed her lips for a moment. "I had to be." At that moment, the door opened, and a doctor walked in, followed by a nurse. They both smiled when they saw Olivia awake. Ms. Sterling, good to see you awake and aware, greeted the doctor, stepping up to the bed. "How are you feeling?" Ethan stood up, making room for the doctor to examine Olivia. "I'll go get some coffee while you get checked out," he said. "I'll be right back." Olivia nodded, and Ethan left the room, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. The ice was broken, but the path ahead remained long and uncertain. In the weeks that followed, as Olivia gradually regained her strength, the dynamic among the three of them slowly evolved. After being discharged, she moved into the apartment Ethan had rented, a comfortable two-bedroom place overlooking a small park. Though initially reluctant, she agreed to it after Ethan explained it was only temporary until she fully recovered and they could discuss more permanent options. Ethan did not move into that apartment, keeping his own place a few blocks away, but he spent most of his time there. He hired a nurse to help Olivia during the day, and every evening after picking Lily up from school, they shared dinner together. At first, those meals were quiet and awkward. Olivia, still weak and processing everything that had happened, said little. Ethan, anxious not to push her, stuck to safe topics: Lily's progress at school, the day's news, plans for the next meal. Sensing the tension, Lily alternated between trying to cheer them up and lapses of silent observation. But as the days passed, small changes began to appear. The first sign came one afternoon when Ethan arrived to find Olivia and Lily in the tiny kitchen attempting to make cookies. Flour was everywhere, and the smell of something slightly burnt lingered in the air. "We're making cookies," Lily announced proudly, her face dusted with flour. "But I think the first batch didn't come out so good." Olivia, perched on a stool by the counter, looked tired, but had a sparkle in her eyes Ethan hadn't seen in a long time. "I insisted," she explained with a slight shrug. "There apparently cookies are essential to recovery." "Absolutely," Ethan agreed, playing along. "I've heard that the scent of freshly baked cookies increases white blood cells by 200%. Lily laughed, a crystal sound that seemed to brighten the small apartment. "You made that up." "Caught me," Ethan admitted, raising his hands in surrender. "But it's true that cookies make everything better. May I help with the next batch?" To his surprise, Olivia answered, "Please, it's clear we need professional supervision." That afternoon marked a subtle turning point. The ice didn't melt entirely, but it began to crack. In the following weeks, more moments like that popped up, small islands of normalcy and even joy in a sea of uncertainties. One particularly pleasant afternoon, Ethan suggested a picnic in the small park across the street. Lily loved the idea and hurried to help prepare a basket. Olivia, now able to walk short distances without getting too tired, agreed after some hesitation. Sitting on a blanket under the shade of a large tree, the three of them might have appeared to any casual observer as a perfectly normal family enjoying a spring day. Lily would occasionally run off to chase squirrels or butterflies, returning to report her discoveries with childlike excitement. Ethan watched Olivia, who seemed more relaxed than she had been since waking in the hospital. Leaning her back against the tree trunk, she closed her eyes briefly, letting the sun filtering through the leaves play across her face. "I missed this," she said softly, not opening her eyes. "The park?" Ethan asked. "Just existing without constantly fighting." She opened her eyes and looked at Lily, who was now crouched near a flower bed, studying something on the ground. Seeing her like that, carefree, being just a kid, Ethan felt a knot in his throat. "She's amazing, Olivia. Strong, smart, compassionate. You did an incredible job despite everything you went through." Olivia looked at him directly then, something she rarely did since her recovery. "I had no choice," she said matter-of-factly, with no bitterness. "When you have someone who depends on you completely, you find strength you never knew you had." The implication hung in the air. She had been alone with no choice because Ethan wasn't there. He wanted to say he would have helped, would have been there if he'd known. But he knew that was a fragile argument. Instead, he opted for honesty. "I'm sorry you had to do it all alone," he said simply. "I really am." Olivia didn't respond immediately. She watched Lily a bit longer before speaking again. "It wasn't always terrible, you know. We had good moments, movie nights under blankets, scavenger hunts in our apartment on rainy days, made-up bedtime stories." A small smile touched her lips. "Lily has an incredible imagination. You've probably noticed." "I have," Ethan said, recalling the fantastical tales she spun. "She told me about the secret kingdom in her closet, ruled by a three-legged cat wearing a crown." Olivia laughed, a sound so unfamiliar now that it almost startled Ethan. Sir Whiskers, a benevolent but demanding ruler. Apparently, only those who know the secret password, which changes weekly, are allowed in. And it always involves some kind of meow or purr, Ethan added with a grin. They shared a brief moment of complicity, united by their love for the same remarkable child. For an instant, the years of separation seemed to shrink, and they were simply Liv and Ethan again, as they had been before ambition and wounded pride tore them apart. But then Olivia averted her gaze, and the moment passed. Silence returned, less tense than before, but still laden with everything left unspoken. Lily came running back, cupping something in her hands. "Look," she cried, opening her fingers slightly to reveal a small ladybug. "It landed on my hand because I stayed super still." "They say ladybugs are good luck," Olivia said, leaning in to see the tiny red insect. "Did you know they help protect gardens? They're like little guardians." "Like knights in red armor," Ethan added. Lily pondered that idea. "I guess she needs a name then. All knights have names." "How about Lady Spot?" Ethan suggested. "Or Scarlet the Brave," Olivia offered. Lily shook her head at both suggestions. "I'm calling her Doy Readington, protector of gardens and friend of children," she declared with all the solemnity of a royal ceremony. Ethan and Olivia glanced at each other and burst out laughing at the same time, a genuine shared laugh that chipped away more of the tension between them. As the sun began to set, they gathered their things and headed back to the apartment. Olivia, tired but visibly more cheerful than usual, insisted on helping make dinner. The three of them worked in the small kitchen, Lily washing vegetables, Olivia slicing them carefully, and Ethan handling the rest. The simple meal, roast chicken with vegetables and rice, was eaten amid light conversation and occasional laughter. For the first time, they caught a glimpse of what they could be as a family, if only they allowed themselves to dream it possible. Later, after Lily went to bed, Ethan and Olivia sat on the apartment's small balcony, watching the city lights begin to sparkle against the darkening sky. Ethan handed her a cup of tea, chamomile, with a hint of honey, just the way she used to like it. "Thank you," she said, accepting the cup. The word carried more meaning than simple gratitude for tea, and they both knew it. "For you and Lily, I'd do anything," he replied, settling into the chair beside her. Olivia studied him over the rim of her cup as she took a sip. "You've changed," she observed quietly. Ethan thought for a moment. "I think so. Or maybe I just remembered who I really am, underneath all the layers I built up over the years. These past years haven't been kind to me," Olivia said after a pause. "Physically and emotionally. I have scars, Ethan, many you can't see." "I know," he said softly. "I don't expect them to vanish overnight, or that a single picnic could erase years of struggle. I only hope that with time we can build something new, something good for Lily." Olivia nodded, turning her gaze back to the city before them. "She likes you," she said. "I've never seen her connect so quickly with someone." Ethan felt his heart tighten at that statement. The bond he'd formed with Lily was the most precious treasure he had now. "She's extraordinary," he said, "and she deserves the best we can give her." Olivia didn't reply right away. When she finally did, her voice was so soft it was almost lost to the night breeze. "I'm afraid, Blake. Afraid to trust again, afraid to let myself believe this time could be different." The raw honesty in her confession touched Ethan profoundly. It was the first time since she woke up that she'd really opened even a small window into her feelings. "Your fear is justified," he acknowledged. "I can't promise I'll never disappoint you again, but I can promise I'll do everything in my power to be the person you and Lily deserve. And I understand if you need time, lots of time." Olivia looked at him, then really looked as if seeing beyond the surface, beyond the successful businessman, beyond the ex-boyfriend who had hurt her. For a moment, Ethan felt utterly exposed, all his flaws and fears laid bare. One day at a time, she finally said, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "That's all I can offer right now." For Ethan it was more than enough. It was a beginning, a small, fragile beginning, but a real one, the start of something that with care and patience might grow into something beautiful and lasting. Sitting side by side on the balcony, watching the city that never sleeps, they allowed themselves, perhaps for the first time, to imagine a future different from what they'd envisioned. A future where old wounds could heal, where pride and fear wouldn't dictate their choices, where a makeshift family could find its way back to each other. A future that, despite its uncertainty, suddenly seemed possible. A month had passed since Olivia's hospital discharge. Her recovery was steady, though slow. Weekly medical visits confirmed her heart was responding well to the treatment, but the doctors emphasized the need for ongoing care and the possibility of a future surgical intervention. During this period, the dynamic among the three of them had subtly transformed. Olivia's initial mistrust toward Ethan was gradually replaced by a reluctant acceptance of his presence in their lives. It wasn't full forgiveness or forgetting the past, but a pragmatic acknowledgement that for now this arrangement was best for Lily, and Lily thrived. The new school, proper medical care for her mother, and the financial stability Ethan provided had freed her to simply be a child. Her smile came more easily, her stories grew more elaborate, her sleep was more peaceful. On that Sunday afternoon, the weather was particularly pleasant. One of those perfect spring days Chicago occasionally offers as an apology for harsh winters. Ethan suggested a stroll through Lincoln Park, and to his surprise, Olivia agreed without hesitation. "I need some fresh air," she said simply, "and so do I." They walked the winding paths of the park together, Lily running ahead, occasionally rushing back to show them an interesting leaf or a colorful stone she found. Ethan and Olivia followed in comfortable silence, occasionally commenting on the weather or Lily's latest discovery. When Lily stopped, enthralled by a group of ducks on one of the ponds, Ethan used the moment to check on Olivia. "You don't have to worry so much," she said with a small smile. "I'm not going to collapse in the middle of the park." "Force of habit," Ethan admitted. "I spent a lot of sleepless nights at the hospital hoping you'd—" "Well, you know." Olivia nodded, her gaze drifting to Lily, now trying to coax a squirrel closer with a piece of cookie she'd saved in her pocket. "I never properly thanked you," she said after a moment, "for everything you did for Lily while I was unconscious. Jen told me how you canceled meetings, rearranged your entire life to look after her." "It was nothing," Ethan said automatically. Olivia turned to look at him squarely. "Don't do that," she said firmly. "Don't minimize it." It was significant for Lily, and for me too. Ethan felt the weight of those words. It was the first time Olivia openly acknowledged the importance of his recent actions. "You're welcome," he said simply. They continued walking, eventually finding a quiet spot under a large tree. Ethan spread out the blanket they'd brought, and the three of them sat down to enjoy a simple picnic. Lily devoured her sandwich and apple in record time before asking permission to explore a small area nearby, always within sight of the adults. Left alone, a different kind of silence settled, denser, filled with unspoken words. Ethan noticed. Olivia seemed uneasy, as if gathering her courage to speak. "I've been thinking a lot," she began, eyes fixed on Lily, who was now happily piling up small stones a short distance away. About the past, about decisions. Ethan felt his heart beat faster, but kept his expression neutral. What kind of decisions? Olivia took a deep breath. Why I left, or to start with? It was the first time they directly addressed the subject since Olivia woke up in the hospital. Ethan had avoided pressing her, respecting her pace, though his curiosity and guilt burned inside him. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to," he offered. "I do," she insisted, still not looking at him. "I think we both need this conversation," Ethan nodded, waiting for her to continue. "I left because I didn't feel seen, much less loved," Olivia said, her words now flowing more easily. "You never had time for me. You lived for your business, and I was invisible to you." The truth of her statement hit Ethan hard. It wasn't anything he hadn't already known or admitted to himself in lonely nights of reflection, but hearing it directly from Olivia made it more real and more painful. "After a while, I had enough," she continued. "You lived for your business, and I was invisible to you. I deserved better." "You did deserve better," Ethan said, his voice with emotion. "So, you deserved far more than I was willing or able to give back then." Olivia finally turned to face him. "It was never about what you could give me materially, Ethan. It was never about money or expensive gifts. It was about being there, about really seeing me." Ethan nodded, accepting the criticism. "I know. It took me a long time to understand that. Maybe I only truly grasped it when I saw Lily for the first time." Lily's name made Olivia avert her gaze again, watching their daughter, who was now chatting enthusiastically with another child who had wandered over to admire her stone tower. "When I found out I was pregnant, you had already been in China for 2 months, Olivia said, her voice quieter now. "I tried to reach you, called your office repeatedly, left messages, no reply." Ethan felt sick hearing that. "My God, Olivia, I swear I never got those messages." Jenkins, my assistant at the time, never said anything. Olivia shrugged as though it no longer mattered. Maybe he screened calls from an ex-girlfriend, or maybe you were so busy making a name for yourself that you didn't notice. The accusation was fair, and Ethan didn't try to defend himself. "What happened after that?" he asked softly. "I waited a few more weeks. Then I realized I had to move on for me and the baby. I moved to Boston, where a friend offered me a place to stay. I thought I could rebuild my life there." The idea of Olivia, pregnant and alone, trying to get by in a new city, tore at Ethan's heart. "I would have helped Olivia if I'd known." "Would you really?" she asked, not angrily, just genuinely curious. "The man you were then so consumed by ambition? Would he have truly dropped everything to help a pregnant ex-girlfriend?" Ethan wanted to say yes, that he would have done the right thing, but the honesty now guiding their relationship demanded more. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "I want to believe I would have. But the truth is, I don't know who I was back then. Or rather, I do. I was someone obsessed with success, with approval from people who didn't really matter, someone who measured worth in dollars and cents." Olivia seemed to appreciate his candor, nodding slightly. "That's why I never came back to tell you about Lily, even later on. The man I knew wasn't ready to be a father, wasn't ready to put someone else above his ambition." "And now," Ethan asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Olivia studied him for a long moment. Now you're different. Or maybe you're who you always were underneath all those layers. The man I saw taking care of Lily while I was in the hospital, who stayed up nights by my bedside, who rearranged his whole life without hesitation. That man could be a good father." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Ethan's heart pounded. "Claire," he began, unsure how to continue. She lifted her hand to stop him. "Let me finish. There's something I need to say. Something I should have said a long time ago." Ethan nodded, respecting her request. Olivia took a deep breath, looked once more at Lily, still lost in her own world of stones, then locked eyes with Ethan. "Lily is your daughter, Ethan." Though he had already suspected, though all evidence pointed to it, though his heart had already accepted it. Hearing those words from Olivia, clear and definitive, hit him like an explosion in his chest. A flood of emotions overwhelmed him. Profound sorrow for the time lost, for the birth he never witnessed, the first steps he missed, the first words he never heard. Yet also an indescribable joy for the confirmation, for Olivia's explicit acknowledgement, and for the chance to finally be a real father to Lily. I knew," he managed after a moment, voice trembling. "Ever since I first saw her, those eyes, my eyes, your expression," Olivia said with a small smile. "And that stubbornness? All yours," Ethan laughed, though tears blurred his vision. "Thank you for telling me, for confirming, even if I already knew." "You deserve to hear it from me," Olivia replied simply. "So, you both deserved the truth." Ethan glanced at Lily, unaware of the conversation that changed everything. "Does she know?" he asked. Olivia shook her head. "No, I was waiting for the right moment. And now I think it's time. But we need to do it together carefully. She has so many questions about her father. She's made up so many stories." "I know," Ethan said softly. "She's shared some with me." A comfortable silence enveloped them as they watched their daughter. There was so much to discuss, so much to plan, legal matters, housing arrangements, how and when to tell Lily. But at that moment, it felt enough just to be there together, witnessing the miracle they had created. "I'm not promising anything beyond what I've already said," Olivia warned after a few minutes. "One day at a time. There's a lot of history between us, a lot of pain that's still healing." "I know," Ethan replied, "and I'm not asking for more than that, just the chance to be present, to be the father Lily deserves, and maybe over time build something between us. Not necessarily what we had before, but something new, something better." Olivia nodded, seeming satisfied by his answer. "A new beginning, then." "A new beginning," he agreed. Lily chose that moment to come running back, eyes shining with excitement. "I finished my sculpture," she announced proudly. "You have to come see it." Ethan and Olivia exchanged a quick look full of unspoken promises before getting up to follow their daughter. The sculpture was a tower of stones carefully balanced to form a precarious but impressive stack that defied gravity. "It's beautiful," Olivia praised, kneeling down for a better view. "What does it represent?" Ethan asked, genuinely curious. Lily looked at him as though the answer was obvious. "It's our family, silly. See, this big stone at the bottom is you because you're strong and hold everyone up. The one in the middle is Mom because she keeps everything connected. And this small one on top is me." Ethan felt his heart swell at the simplicity and depth of her explanation. Without realizing it, Lily had created the perfect representation of what they were becoming, fragile, yet with the right balance and care, able to stand firm. "It's perfect," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Absolutely perfect." Olivia reached out and took his hand, a small gesture, but significant. It was the first time since this all began that she'd initiated physical contact. They stood side by side, watching their daughter place the final pebble atop her creation. In that simple moment under the spring sun in Lincoln Park, as Lily proudly presented her family made of stones, something finally shifted fully and irrevocably. It wasn't the end of their journey, not by a long shot. There was still much to heal, much to build, much to learn about one another. But it was a beginning without empty promises or unrealistic expectations. A beginning based on truth finally brought into the light, allowing old wounds to dry and begin to heal. Ethan looked down at their joined hands, then at Lily, feeling a certainty he'd never felt before. It didn't matter how long it took or what obstacles lay ahead. This was his family, his home. Not the luxurious Gold Coast apartment, not the corporate empire he'd built, but these two people by his side. For the first time in his life, Ethan Miller felt he was exactly where he should be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. No longer chasing a hypothetical future of wealth and power, but living fully in the present. Building a future made of moments like this, imperfect, delicate, but infinitely precious. A new home built not of bricks and mortar, but of love, redemption, and the tiny daily miracles that bind a family together. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people.